on Mind Over Matter, we welcome Audrey Rindlisbacher, author of The Mission Driven Life and founder of The Mission Driven Mom. Audrey has spent years studying the lives of great leaders, thinkers, and change makers to uncover the 7 laws of life mission, principles that help ordinary people step into extraordinary purpose. This conversation is about discovering what we are truly here to do and how to live with clarity, courage, and contribution. Welcome to the show, Audrey. It's such an honor to have you.
Oh, thank you.
So, Audrey, what led you to devote your life to studying mission driven living and eventually uncovering these 7 laws?
It goes back to several years ago. I was involved in a college. I was taking some classes. I had 3 small children and I wanted something just for me. And when I was involved with this college, people kept talking about this concept called life mission. And they kept saying that they were doing what they were doing because it was life mission. In fact, I heard some pretty crazy stories of the kinds of sacrifices people made in the name of life mission. And it really got me thinking, what is the power of this term? Why do these people talk about this idea of life mission that it leads them to make these incredible sacrifices, move their whole family across the country or go without things or whatever the case might be. And I looked around for books on the topic and I couldn't really find anything very helpful. And so I decided to start studying about great men and women that I loved. There's a book that really was life-changing for me called The Hiding Place. And it's about a family who saved the lives of over 800 Jews in Holland during World War II. And I really admired them and looked up to them. But when I found other books that they had written, I discovered that they had many of the same problems that I had had and was having as a young mom. Problems in my marriage, problems with addiction, problems raising my children, problems with extended family. And they started to kind of show me the way of how I could get out of that. And I thought, well, if they could go from being kind of like me to being extraordinary people that do extraordinary things, how could I follow in their footsteps? And so that just led me on this journey of studying dozens of great men and women who I really believe had a very positive impact in the world. I wanted to understand how they became who they were. And so many of them came from very simple circumstances. They didn't have advantages. They weren't like born into royalty or anything along those lines. And so eventually what emerged from that study was these 7 laws of life mission. And as I lived them myself and then had the opportunity to teach them and walk many students, hundreds of students through them, we've been able to see their great power to help people to lift themselves out of their current problems and solve those problems and kind of put their homes and lives in better order and start to have impact in their communities and do things that are really meaningful for them. So it's been really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And do you think everyone has a unique mission or are some simply called to support others' mission?
Well, it's definitely a call to support any great cause. The reason that everyone does have a mission is because everyone is unique and irreplaceable. And everyone has been fashioned by their creator in specific certain ways to do work that's meaningful for our other brothers and sisters on earth. I think we're all brothers and sisters. I think we're all the children of one God. And it's our job to help each other along the way. And so what we do, what I try to help people do through my book and other programs is to engage in a process of taking better care of themselves and managing themselves better, and then learning a lot more about themselves. People are way more gifted and unique. And they have, in fact, we've had so many women that are like, they have certain characteristics about themselves that they thought were weaknesses, like being competitive, for example, which actually turned out to be great strengths that they could use in noble causes. So everyone has unique work that they can do, and they're irreplaceable in that work for the place where they're placed in the world and the community in which they find themselves and the unique talents and interests and strengths that they bring. They can do specific things that no one else can do. And they can feel called, like they can feel deep inside themselves that there's something they should be doing with these talents and gifts. And what we want to do is help people to better identify who they are and then understand what's going on in the world a little bit better so they can match their strengths with real needs. And in that way, it brings this depth of purpose and meaning to their lives that I just don't think you can find any other way.
Yeah, that's inspiring. It shows that mission isn't reserved for the greats of history. It's available to each of us in our own way.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you studied figures like Mother Teresa and C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
What patterns stood out that helped you from these 7 laws?
So I studied them from childhood. So I wanted to understand the different decisions that they made and why they made those decisions and what decisions led to other decisions. And I was looking for things that they had in common. So the 7 laws are pretty simple. The 4 foundational laws are loving God, loving yourself, loving truth, and loving humanity. And those all have subtitles. Like, for example, loving God is establishing a divine center in your life, submitting yourself to something higher than yourself, recognizing that you don't get to be a law unto yourself. There are laws out there that you need to submit to, or loving yourself is striving for self mastery. So, in every case, these individuals did those things. There were times when they had to submit their will to something higher than themselves, to lose themselves in work and uh, change their behavior in submission to what's the proper and right way to do things rather than the way that they'd prefer to do them. Or they had to meet their real needs or whatever it might be. And so I just took lots of notes and I combed through these different readings about them. Sometimes I would watch videos or biographies. I tried to go to original sources if they had an autobiography. I tried to spend time in that, to listen to them talk about themselves in the first person. Like Mahatma Gandhi has an autobiography. Mother Teresa does not, but she has an official biographer. And then I just looked for what did they all have in common? Well, they all had these things in common. And when they did those 4 foundational laws, when they were really acting like servant leaders in the world and they understood their gifts and talents and they lived according to true principles, then they would hear the call. They would start to understand something that they felt they needed to do. Like in Mother Teresa's case, she had so many calls over her life, and you can see them one by one. In her younger years, she was learning to love God under the tutelage of her mother. She was learning to manage herself and love herself and understand some of her own gifts and interests. She was living according to good principles and being a servant leader in her community to the capacity that she could. One of the things I didn't know that was amazing about her is that even as a young girl, her mother would go out into the community and care for the poor and the sick. And so she was pretty adept already at caring for wounds and being around sick people because her mother had taught her that. But then she felt the call to become a nun. And then later the call to teach in a private school. And then eventually she was the principal. And then she felt the call to go out and work with the poor and on and on. And so it went all throughout her life. And that's how it can be for us. Motherhood is a call. Being married, having a spouse is a call, because those are things that we're irreplaceable in, that require the best that's in us, where we can serve with our talents and gifts others around us. So those are also calls, but we can continue to hear those calls as we live each of those 7 laws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And did you discover that their greatness was less about talent and more about discipline and principles?
Yes and no, because there are a lot of things that are talents that people don't realize are talents. Everyone is incredibly talented. The problem is that we often put the word, the concept of a talent or a gift in a box, and we put things in that box and we think those are the only things that are talents, but you can be talented at so many things. You can be naturally very funny or very empathic. You can be naturally good at coding on computers or at cleaning things immaculately or design. I think it's a combination of both. It's not because you don't even necessarily need to have any special advantages. You just need to have the self-awareness. I often tell people, if you're not sure where to start by meeting your real needs and trying the things you've always wanted to try. And there are many women who finally give themselves permission to go try things, and they find that they really love them and they're naturally good at them. And that's not surprising, because we're usually drawn to things that we're good at. And they also begin to discover that there are other things that, like I said before, they might have seen as weaknesses or definitely not a talent, but it's actually really a talent they can bring to any organization or any group of people and be of service to them in unique ways. I mean, if you play the guitar, there's a million ways that you can use that talent. You can get better at it. You don't have to be a top rock star or country star or whatever. You can simply serve with your love of playing guitar in a myriad of ways. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So
Yeah.
so it's a combination of, yeah, you're not, I mean, it's funny to say everyone is extraordinary that will choose to develop their talents and use them for good. Like, that's why ordinary people can do extraordinary things, because we all think of ourselves as ordinary, but we're all capable of doing things we never thought we could do.
Yeah, I love that because it makes living a mission feel possible and not mythical.
Yeah. Yes, it is very
Mhm.
possible because it's a mindset. It's a lens through which you see yourself and other people, and you recognize that the most fulfilling life that you could live is one where you put yourself in a place to be of service to others using those things that you're uniquely gifted at. And all of us can do that.
Yeah, 100%. And of the seven laws, which one do you see people struggle with the most in today's culture?
Well, I would say in the West, there's a decline in faith. So some people definitely struggle to know that they don't have to live life alone, that they can walk with God and that He can support and uplift them and inspire them and be there for them. But probably loving yourself, I don't know. There's points at which people struggle with a lot of them. Loving truth. We all, I think a lot of us want to love truth, but we're not sure what that looks like. But I would say, especially getting started on this path, probably loving yourself, because there's a lot of mixed messages out there about what that means. There's a lot of people telling you that in order to love yourself, you need to do things that aren't actually good for you, that don't actually nurture your self image, that don't actually create inner strength and discipline and self mastery. And so that's something that can be really hard for people to understand what that really means and to know how to take steps to love themselves better. And sometimes people also don't understand why that matters at all. You just, yeah, sure. And they don't think of, like, people wouldn't say that Mother Teresa loved herself. That's not what they would, I think, believe about her, or even, I mean, some people might say, oh, she never, and it is true that in a sense, she didn't think about herself because she never asked what's in it for me. But in terms of loving yourself in a mission driven way, there's three principles of self care, self management, and self discovery. And she definitely did all three of those a lot. And so she really did love herself, which is why she had the confidence to do what she did. And it's also the power to love others flowed from that good relationship with herself. Because those are connected. Like, our relationship with ourselves is vital to how good our relationships with other people can be. So it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. How can someone begin strengthening that law in their own life right now?
Well, I would say that there's so many things that they could do. One of the things, like I said, that they could do is just start by trying to discover more about themselves. So they could try things they've always wanted to try. They could set aside time each day, even just half an hour, to try to develop some gift or talent. We live in a really beautiful time where there's so much information available to us online that you can develop almost any talent. Like, at least in the beginning stages, you can do that almost for free. My son wanted to play the drums, and so he just dragged his drum set into another room and he just went on YouTube and he just started playing. So there's lots of ways to gain more self-acceptance through understanding just how unique you are, how special you are, how different you are. There's a book that everyone could go get. This is one that we use in our academy. It's called The Cure for the Common Life. And I don't know if all your listeners are Christian, or that probably not, but it's written by a Christian pastor, and you don't need to be Christian to read it or to benefit from it. But basically, in this book, the first part of the book, he's convincing you that you really are unique. Like, he tells the story of a man who he was on a plane with him, and this man just didn't believe that he had a calling. He didn't believe that he was unique. He didn't believe that he had any talents. And so this author, his name is Max Lucado, started asking him all these questions about how he spent his time and what he loved to do. And he said, well, you're going to think what I love to do is really stupid. And he said, no, I'm not. He said, well, I love to go to garage sales or to get things free off of line that people are just giving away and to clean them up and fix them up. And sometimes I resell them or I just use them. And Max Lucado said, oh, you have the gift of restoration. And this man it almost brought tears to his eyes as he began to understand that this unique ability of his was not something that was easy for other people to do. It was not something other people are able to do, and he could use it in so many ways for good. So in this book, it's called The Cure for the Common Life. He'll talk to you about how you were divinely made and why that matters and how you're unique. And then he has these exercises in the back of the book where you can walk through, and what you'll do is you'll explore your past. And he asks you all these really awesome questions. And if you'll take the time to journal about them, you'll start to uncover. He has an acronym called STORY, STORY. And each of those stands for something about how you're unique. And if you go through all his exercises in the book, you'll know a lot more about what makes you special and unique and how you could start developing some of your gifts. So that would be one thing that I would recommend anyone can go do right now to help them better love and like themselves.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's amazing. And that's such a practical insight because naming the obstacle gives people courage to face it instead of feeling alone in the struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I work with moms, and that's how a lot of moms feel. They're home a lot, taking care of babies, and they start to lose themselves in motherhood. And so spending some time nurturing themselves is really important.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you have guided over 600 women through this framework. What transformation have you seen when someone truly embraces their mission?
There have been lots of transformations. What commonly happens is that they start to what I like to say a lot is that 1 + 1 = 2 until 1 changes. And what that means is that lots of people feel like that their life is the way it is because of circumstances out of their control, and that even if they changed, it wouldn't change anything. And that's just 100% not true. As soon as you start to change the way that you see yourself and the way that you see other people, you are different. And when you are different, everything around you starts to be different. And when you are better, everything around you starts to be better because the people in your life are forced to respond to you differently and interact with you differently. And so this is why, as these women grow in learning how to better love God and themselves and how to live according to principles, what happens is that, like, for example, sometimes one woman lost over 80 pounds, or many marriages have been restored or healed or just made better. Many women show up far more optimistic, and they talk about feeling like they have even more time, more energy. They feel more excited about life. They have a lot more self-acceptance. They like themselves better. And as they develop their talents, then they start to see needs in their communities, and many of them have gone out to do really beautiful things. Women have served on school boards or city councils in their cities and areas. Some women have offered programs to teach homemaking skills to girls. Another woman helped to found a charter school in her town. Another woman bought land in Mexico, and she's opening an orphanage for children in Mexico. And so some of them serve in other nonprofit organizations. Some of them start their own things. Some of them just go help existing organizations or needs that they see, but they know better where they can help. And it's just so fulfilling to show up in these spaces and have answers and feel like you can help and to be part of something that's meaningful and to be making the world a little bit better place. And then we encourage them to bring their children with them in everything that they do as much as they can, because then their children understand what mission-driven living looks like, and then they're more motivated to do it themselves, because as parents, our example is everything. And so we just want to model that for our kids. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. And Does living your mission change your circumstances or simply change the way you move through them?
Well, some things we can't change and some things we can change. And part of, as probably everyone listening knows, part of being happy in life is accepting what can't be changed and then changing what can be changed. So the biggest factor is the woman herself, because these women that have spent time with us going through all of these laws with us over a 3-year period or more sometimes, they don't have to spend that long with us, but many of them do. They're just so different. I'll give you a small example. So there was a woman that did our program, and her marriage had been bad for years. And she had thought about, and I think even talked about divorce on and off for many years. And she didn't want to sign up in the academy because there are some short selections from some self-help books that are layered with a lot of other genres we read. We read speeches and fairy tales and novels. We read a lot of different types of things, and then we watch, we learn things through video. Anyway, there's ways that the content is laid out. But she had, in particular in her life, bad experiences with self-help books. She felt that they always made her feel worse about herself and that she didn't want to spend time in them. And so she resisted signing up. But then finally a woman had a sit-down conversation with her and helped her understand what it might do for her. So she decided, okay, I'll try it. Well, one of the huge things that she learned through the academy was that at the heart of her marital problems was a paradigm that she had, a belief, a really strong belief that she held, that there were certain things that her husband should be fixing for her and doing for her. And she came to see that they were things she could only do for herself. So she had been waiting around for her husband to fix some of her problems and to show up for her and to meet her needs for her and to do things for her that she came to understand he really could not do for her. It was not his role or responsibility. And so as she saw that clearly and she placed proper responsibility where it lay, and she started to understand what she needed, how she needed to show up better for herself, and she cleared away the wrong expectations of her husband, she didn't want a divorce anymore. She stopped blaming him for all sorts of things that she had blamed him for. And that's how she was different, but then her life became different and her marriage became radically different because the way that she talked to her husband and thought about her husband and interacted with her husband was so different that their marriage really started to flourish and be a happy one. So you don't need to move across the country or, win the lottery or go get a doctorate degree in order to be on a mission or to start right now. But you do need to be willing and ready to be honest with yourself about who you are. And sometimes the hardest thing for people is to be honest with themselves about who they are in the best ways, like the talents they really do have, the things they really can accomplish, and the potential that really does lie within them. And then to just, go along that journey of understanding and living those 7 laws, and you will get there. I mean, we have all these women that have come through, and if they follow and they honor those laws, they do hear calls, they do go do meaningful things. So we know that the process works. And on my podcast, there's a lot of what we call mission-driven stories. And I take you through the lives of these men and women that I study, and I show you how they lived these 7 laws so that you can see for yourself, yes, people have done this and it does work and it can work for you too.
Yes, that's beautiful. It suggests that mission gives resilience, a compass even in chaos.
Yeah.
So Audrey shows us that mission is not a mystery. It's a path guided by timeless laws that anyone can live by. If you have been searching for meaning, let today's conversation remind you. Your mission is already within you, waiting to be claimed. So until next time, keep leaning into the principle that turn ordinary lives into extraordinary legacies.